I'm Teisha with Shalom TV's news update for Monday, September the 16th, 2013. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu met yesterday with U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry in Jerusalem. In remarks made following the meeting, Netanyahu thanked Kerry for taking the time to visit Israel and for Kerry's efforts to rid Syria of its chemical weapons. The Prime Minister reiterated his stance that radical regimes like Syria and like Iran must not be allowed to have weapons of mass destruction. He also addressed his and Kerry's discussion of the status of peace talks between Israel and the Palestinians, saying that both leaders know that the road is not an easy one. Kerry agreed with Netanyahu, saying if the road were easy, peace would have been achieved long ago, adding, though, that it was clearer than ever today that it was a road worth traveling.
So, Mr. Prime Minister, I know you and I are both clear-eyed about the challenges ahead. We have to summon the grit and the determination to stay at this, to make the tough decisions. Tough decisions about eliminating weapons of mass destruction, and tough decisions about making peace between Israel and the Palestinians. We will not lose sight of the end game. I know that from talking with the Prime Minister today. And I think both of us remain deeply committed, and we hope very much with our partners in the region to doing our best to try to make this journey towards peace get to its destination.
Kerry also stressed while addressing the Syria issue in Jerusalem that the use of force by the Obama administration was still on the table if Syria did not comply in giving up its weapons. And after leaving Israel, Kerry traveled to Paris, where he met with French Foreign Minister Fabius and British Foreign Secretary Haig, where the leaders called for a swift UN resolution regarding Syria. Kerry reiterated that an accord reached over the weekend with Russian counterpart Sergei Lavrov called for a UN resolution referring to sanctions for non-compliance, including a new Security Council resolution. Kerry said if Assad fails in time to abide by the terms of this framework, make no mistake, we are all agreed, and that includes Russia, that there will be consequences. And U.S. President Barack Obama praised the deal with Russia, but also sent out a warning to the leaders of Iran. The president told ABC's George Stephanopoulos,
they shouldn't draw a lesson that we haven't struck to think we won't strike Iran. On the other hand, what they should draw from this lesson is that there is the potential of resolving these issues diplomatically.
The Times of Israel reports that newly elected president of the International Olympic Committee, Thomas Bach, will in fact resign from an organization which strongly supports the anti-Israel boycott movement. As we have been reporting to you, several Jewish organizations called on Bach to resign from GORFA, the Arab-German Chamber of Commerce and Industry that helps companies make sure they avoid any products or trade from Israel. Head of media at the German Olympic Sports Confederation and Bach spokesperson Christian Klau told the Times of Israel that Bach will resign as the president of GORFA. Klau also denied that GORFA has anything to do with the Arab world's boycott of Israel. The Jerusalem Post reports that Israeli and Palestinian agriculture ministries agreed over the weekend to revive some of the joint committees formed in the 1990s under the Oslo Accords, committees which were frozen 13 years ago with the onset of the Second Intifada, or Palestinian Uprising. The ministries also decided to join forces in establishing a regional center for agricultural economic cooperation. According to the Israeli Agriculture Ministry, the decision to establish the center came about during a meeting on Saturday night between Directors General of the Israeli and Palestinian Authority Ministries, Rami Cohen and Abdallah Lalou, respectively. Cohen and Lalou decided that it would be in the interest of both Israel and the Palestinians to restart some of the cooperative agricultural committees that were halted, such as a plant protection committee, a marketing committee, and a veterinary committee. Agriculture Ministry officials will also resume training Palestinian farmers and help with the transfer of Palestinian agricultural products to Israel and to export. The discussions this weekend focused on improving food quality as well for the Palestinian public, and the ministry said that enhancing agriculture on the Palestinian side will also improve things on the Israeli side. Agriculture Minister Yair Shamir said the residents of Israel and the Palestinian Authority will benefit from a tightening of economic ties, and there is no doubt that agricultural cooperation will help ease the regional tensions by creating an economic benefit for both sides. The Jewish Week reports, citing the Canadian Jewish News, that Jewish groups in Quebec have issued new statements expressing their opposition to the government's proposed values charter, which would ban religious headgear and other, quote, conspicuous religious symbols for public sector employees. The Center for Israel and Jewish Affairs and B'nai B'rith Canada say that the prohibition goes against the established government human rights protections, such as the Federal Charter of Rights and Freedoms and the Quebec Charter of Human Rights and Freedoms. CJN quoted the CJIA saying that it is unacceptable and will only serve to inflame civil discourse, calling the proposed legislation discriminatory, arbitrary, provocative, and one that will sow the seeds of division that the government claims it wishes to avoid. The CJN said that the charter aims to protect the secular and gender-neutral nature of public institutions. The Jewish Theological Seminary and the JCC Association announced the second cohort of the Jewish Experiential Leadership Institute, an online and in-person leadership and professional development program which is specifically designed for Jewish community center professionals. The fellowship program, supported by funding from the Jim Joseph Foundation, is the result of collaborative efforts among the William Davidson Graduate School of Jewish Education of the Jewish Theological Seminary and the JCC Association's Department of Professional Development, as well as the Mandel Center for Jewish Education. The program is designed as an in-service program for middle and senior management professionals in Jewish community centers throughout the country. Its primary goal is to enhance the personal growth, Jewish leadership abilities, and professional skill sets of talented emerging leaders working in settings that nurture Jewish experiential educational programs. Hungarian news agency MTI reported last week that Budapest will construct a $22 million memorial at a train station from which many Hungarian Jews were deported during the Holocaust. The Hungarian Prime Minister's Chief of Staff, János Lázár, said the memorial will feature an educational center and will be opened by spring of next year at Budapest Józsefváros train station, timed to coincide with the 70th anniversary of the deportation of 437,000 Hungarian Jews, which began in the spring of 1944. According to Yad Vashem, the Holocaust Museum in Jerusalem, approximately 565,000 Hungarian Jews were murdered during the Holocaust, many of whom were deported to Auschwitz from the Józsefváros station. Ahead of the upcoming Sukkot holiday, the U.S. Transportation Security Administration has issued special travel guidelines regarding the traditional items carried and used on the holiday. The TSA said its screening procedures do not prohibit the carrying of the 4 plants used during Sukkot: a palm branch, myrtle twigs, willow twigs, and a citron, referring to the etrog, in airports, through security checkpoints, or on airplanes. The TSA notice added that all passengers would undergo security screenings at checkpoints. And in a separate statement, U.S. Customs and Border Protection also noted that the 4 species were allowed entry into the country, but also noted that a number of restrictions would be subject to inspection, saying that travelers will be asked to open the container with the etrog and unwrap it so it can be inspected to see if any insects or insect stings are found. The etrog would be prohibited if found with any insect marks from entering the U.S. And finally, today, in time for Sukkot, Bulgaria's Jewish community is holding the country's first large Jewish culture festival this week in front of the National Palace of Culture in the capital of Sofia. The festival, which opened yesterday, features Jewish music, cinema, literature, and learning in 18 sukkah-shaped stalls. It's being organized together with the American Jewish Joint Distribution Committee. And that's Shalom TV's news update for Monday, September the 16th, 2013. I'm Teisha Bader.